Dr. Vegapunk's plan was set in motion the moment his heart stopped beating. In the recording, Shaka told him to speak slowly so that people all over the world would have time to prepare. After this news was broadcast, it would surely spread everywhere, but they still had to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. All over the world, people had now begun to hear the voice of the genius scientist. Vegapunk's plan was to use marine branches around the world as relay stations. The words they spoke would be forcibly broadcast at maximum power, which is why even if the Marines tried to turn off the equipment, the voice still echoed. On the island, Sanji also heard those words through his headphones. He asked Vegapunk what was going on but received no answer. The two opponents being held by Luffy were extremely angry, while he smiled confidently, having subdued Kizaru and Saturn. Hearing Vegapunk's voice, Luffy thought he was still alive and was very happy. Conversely, Saturn was extremely worried about what the scientist would say to the world. High above, the remaining members of the Straw Hat Pirates were confused about what had happened. Nami and Usopp thought Dr. Vegapunk was acting recklessly. If so, it would ruin their rescue plan. No one had realized that their friend had died, so the recording was automatically played. Back with the giant pirates, Brogy and Dorry were trying to run as fast as they could to Luffy. They knew something was about to happen and felt very excited. Below, the Marines were still ambushing, trying to stop them. However, with Brogy and Dorry's massive size, the Marines were like mere insects. Everyone trembled before these two. Looking at the fools below, the two giant warriors praised their courage. Unfortunately, that wouldn't change anything. A barrage of cannon fire was then shot by the Marines. The explosion was huge, but Dorry and Brogy were completely unharmed. At this point, the soldiers below realized that this was not an opponent they could defeat. Just like that, the axe and sword of the two giant warriors struck down. After just one blow, all the Marines below were defeated. The two captains then continued to search for Luffy. Currently, Dr. Vegapunk's broadcast has not encountered any problems. He decided to take 10 minutes to let people all over the world prepare, so they could clearly hear what he was about to say. Luffy looked excited after hearing this. He thought that now he just needed to deal with the two opponents in front of him, and the whole crew could leave safely. The scene shifts to Mary Jiwaz. At this moment, the broadcast that Vegapunk had prepared was making the 5 elders of the government worried. They communicated with Saturn, asking what was happening. He replied that Kizaru had just killed Vegapunk. Guessing that the message left by the genius scientist would turn the world upside down, these 4 wanted to find the broadcast source and destroy it before things got out of control. They guessed the broadcasting device was protected inside the shield at Egghead. There were 9 minutes left before the truth about the world began to be revealed. However, all over the world, people had already started gathering to listen. Dr. Vegapunk's fame made everyone curious about what he wanted to convey. In the kingdom that Luffy had once rescued from Doflamingo's evil rule, Princess Rebecca was as beautiful as ever. She and her father were watching the broadcast when Leo and Cub arrived. Before that, they heard that Luffy had taken this scientist hostage, but Rebecca didn't believe that information. She knew that Lucy, who had saved her and this kingdom, was not a coward who would take someone hostage. Hearing this, Leo also agreed. Her father realized that Vegapunk was broadcasting voluntarily, not under orders from the government. The truth about the world that the genius doctor spoke of still has to wait for him to tell it himself. The scene shifts to Luffy's hometown, where everyone is also waiting for the latest news. They even thought Luffy had done something bad again. In the places where the Straw Hat Pirates passed through, everyone was preparing to wake up to listen to the broadcast. In the sky, Princess Vivi was on reporter Morgan's hot air balloon. He explained that this broadcast was being relayed through naval branches. But it was an independent signal, so it couldn't be interfered with. Based on the time in the image, Morgan realized that this was not the current time on Egghead, but had been recorded beforehand. This would become world-shattering news, and reporters all wanted to write about it. Vivi was worried about Luffy and his crew, hoping they wouldn't be in any danger. In Usopp and Chopper's hometown, everyone was watching the screen. At the same time, on Okama Island, the Revolutionary Army, especially Ivankov, was very curious about Dr. Vegapunk's head. It looked like it had been cut off, but he was still alive. Other members like Sabo were also curious about the truth of the world in Vegapunk's words. He asked Dragon if the genius doctor would really reveal the truth of the world. He said that some geniuses can even see their own future. Vegapunk had predicted that he would die, so he left this recording. Back to Bonnie and Kuma, they were safely brought back to the ship by their giant friend. The father was still unconscious, with no signs of recovery. Atlas only showed Frankie the giant ship, something they had never seen before. As soon as the two captains returned, they would set sail immediately. Now, the task was to gather all the other members of the Straw Hat crew here. Inside, Luffy was still provoking his opponent. He said that Saturn's punches just now had no effect at all. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Admiral Kizaru attacked, but Maine dodged. He said that, until the very last moment, all his friends would escape from here. So, he wouldn't let them go anywhere. He used his ability to stretch his arm, then slammed Saturn and Kizaru's bodies together with a powerful blow. As a result, the two were flattened by Luffy as thin as a sheet of paper. Not stopping there, he even used his fingers to perform. The bodies of the two enemies were now as soft as a pizza. Luffy then used great force to throw Kizaru and Saturn away. After the fight, he returned to his original size and laughed loudly at his victory. On the coast, the group of Marines discovered something flying towards them. In the next second, Admiral Kizaru's body collided with the ship, causing it to explode. Saint Saturn was luckier, not colliding with anything. He was angry that Luffy had thrown him again. With his ability, Saturn immediately returned to attack. Luffy was also shocked to see this. Under Saturn's new attack, he had to find a way to escape. He didn't understand why his opponent wasn't injured, despite being hit so many times. As for Admiral Kizaru, he was fine, but what pained him was that he had personally killed Vegapunk. Sadly, Kizaru could only cover his face to hide his emotions. In the sky, Luffy's chase was still ongoing. The rulers reminded Saturn that there wasn't much time left. They didn't want Vegapunk's words to affect the world government. Luffy was attacked continuously, but dodged them all. He fell to the ground, but was unharmed. His opponent also landed safely, looking at the captain with terrifying eyes. Saturn knew he couldn't deal with Luffy alone, so he used his ability to summon 4 others from the Holy Land to help. Just like that, the strongest began to act. The sky there turned black again. Lightning bolts struck down, just like when Saturn appeared. Luffy witnessed this scene, not knowing what was happening. Sanji, nearby, looked worried about the captain. The Straw Hat Pirates' worst nightmare has begun. Out at sea, the Navy saw large lightning bolts striking the center of the island. Some soldiers witnessed it firsthand and believed the phenomenon was identical to how Saint Saturn had landed on the island earlier. Nearby, a giant archer was still firing numerous arrows at the Navy's warships, each arrow the size of a mast, making them incredibly powerful. Another giant warrior took the opportunity to jump onto the remaining ships to destroy them all. Inland, the group of giants was excitedly heading towards the center of the island, with dangerous lightning flashes before them, signaling that Luffy needed help. Even Frankie's group had to stop, worried about their friends. Luffy, at this moment, looked surprised, not understanding what had happened, as 4 extremely dangerous dark shadows appeared around him. Sanji exclaimed that something unusual was happening in this place, and therefore they had to leave as soon as possible. At this point, Dr. Vegapunk's recording was still ongoing, broadcast live from Mary Joy's, and it was known that no one could stop this live broadcast. However, the current appearance of the 4 leaders of the world government has put Egghead at risk of destruction. Saturn was continuously attacking Luffy, but he kept dodging. The dark shadows behind him began to reveal their true forms. Seeing this, Luffy was deeply shocked, thinking they were 5 giant monsters. Frightening sounds emanated from within the thick smoke. Luffy stood there, waiting to see what would happen next. In his mind, he felt as if he was being swallowed by the darkness of the 5 monsters. One by one, the different forms of the 4 newly summoned beings appeared. These are the forms of the rulers at the head of the world government. The 5 monsters including Jupiter in the form of a sandworm, Marcus Mars in the form of a bird, Warcury in the form of a pig, Nusjuro in the form of a horse, and finally Saturn in the form of a spider. When these 5 monsters appeared together, destruction had begun. Their roars pushed Luffy back. The buildings also could not withstand it, and collapsed. With his abilities, Luffy easily escaped the rubble. However, standing before him was the massive body of the enemy. At the start of the battle, just the 5 monsters walking past Luffy forced him to dodge. These are the supreme judges of the world government. If this continues, the entire island will be destroyed. Luffy demanded that they stop. He then enhanced his body, transforming into a giant form to fight. However, Saturn used a special skill, an attack with his gaze, to defeat Luffy. Just like that, his large body shrunk back to its original form. Nusjuro then, with incredible speed, jumped over Luffy, and Luffy was also thrown far away by the pressure. With his speed, he reached the battle on the coast, where the pacifistas were still attacking the Navy warships. The damage was immense, which is why Nusjuro had to rush to help. He transformed into a centaur and used a sword to attack. The high-speed slash instantly froze the pacifista's body. This ability is somewhat similar to Brook of the Straw Hat Pirates. Just like that, a series of cyborgs were neutralized by Nusjuro, unable to function. His movement speed was so fast that Navy soldiers couldn't even see what was happening. In this way, the world government faction was able to retain all the pacifistas so that the damage would not increase. The battle on the coast was considered over as the cyborgs had part of their bodies frozen. The soldiers at this time also saw the giant horse form, but Nusjuro disappeared immediately afterward. Inside, Luffy was blown away once again by Marcus Mars. At the same time, Sanji had contacted Nami and Robin. He didn't know how to explain what was happening below, warning of a great danger approaching them. He asked them to escape immediately, and the giant bird also separated to do the same work as Nusjuro. The Marines were happy to regain the upper hand, as they could now avoid unnecessary battles with the cyborgs. The Vice Admiral ordered everyone to quickly find Bonnie and destroy the Straw Hat Pirates. Above, after flying to the shield, the giant bird let out a cry signaling that something bad was about to happen, and Sanji was also trying to run back to regroup with his teammates. He said that an extremely dangerous monster was flying towards them, so they should retreat immediately. Even Sanji had become a target of lightning attacks. Nami was worried that the remaining members had not yet arrived, and Usopp then heard a loud sound coming from behind him. Along with that was Lilith's scream, and Chopper wondered what was happening. Just then, their sunny ship rushed out, shocking the 3 friends, while Brook was still happily enjoying the thrill of the ship speeding away. Lilith begged someone to stop this. Back to Luffy's battle in his Sun God Nika form, Saturn began to feel annoyed as his opponent easily dodged his attacks. Seeing this, Jupiter stepped in to help, trying to swallow Luffy, but he still escaped. Luffy realized that his opponent was an earthworm that could hide underground, and because he couldn't predict where Jupiter would appear, he was thrown into the sky. Just like that, Luffy fell into the mouth of the giant monster. The scene then shifted to the beach, where only a few cyborgs were still active. However, they were soon defeated by Nusjuro, and the giant bird turned its body into fire and plunged straight into the protective shield to find Vegapunk's broadcast device and destroy it. Inside, Usopp still didn't realize this and contacted Sanji, saying that Brook and Lilith were temporarily there with them and the sunny ship. Brook confidently said, "See, I told you it would be fine," and Lilith scolded him for saying that when Usopp was the one who stopped the ship. Before that, when the sunny ship rushed over, he used a type of bullet that grew trees to stop the ship, and they were also planning to leave according to the original plan. However, Zoro was still fighting, and Jinbei was going to call his teammate back. Sanji was angry when he heard this, and he asked Jinbei about the situation there, and he said he understood the situation. Even if their battle is not over, I will force Zoro back. Hearing this, Sanji was somewhat relieved. At the same time, the two powerful warriors were still competing. Lucci continuously used speed to attack, but Zoro still blocked it. His opponent ran around, creating a smokescreen to obscure his vision, and then launched a powerful kick that cut down all the surrounding trees. Zoro also responded with 3 continuous slashes, and as the two sides rushed at each other, they suddenly felt someone extremely powerful attacking this place. In contrast to Zoro's uneasy feeling, Lucci was extremely excited, realizing that it was one of the 5 leaders of the world government. In the next slash, Zoro let go of his sword, and both sides seemed tired, as they couldn't decide a winner. Lucci thought that Zoro was distracted because he felt the terrifying haki, which was covering the entire island. Jinbei had arrived at this point and saw the battle between the two, and Lucci continued to attack with long-range moves. Zoro had to dodge, so he was approached by his opponent, and the battle was still very balanced, with neither side at a disadvantage. Jinbei informed Sanji about this, which annoyed him, as he thought Zoro was putting the entire crew in danger, calling Zoro useless without realizing that he had heard it. Zoro, fueled by his anger, wanted to unleash a finishing blow in the next move. Lucci completely failed to notice the change in his opponent and continued to charge in to attack, but even after throwing hundreds of punches, Zoro still dodged them all. He built up momentum and slashed with all 3 swords, and in that moment, Lucci realized he was the loser. Zoro successfully cut through his opponent, causing him to collapse, and Jinbei was incredibly surprised to witness this. At the same time, Luffy had fallen into the monster's belly. He tried to escape, but was bitten by the earthworm's teeth. Fortunately, he was still able to escape. Luffy said he didn't taste good, so don't eat him like that. As soon as he finished speaking, Saturn controlled Luffy and slammed him straight towards Warcury, and just like that, Luffy's head collided with the head of the giant pig. Once again, he was swallowed by Jew Peter. Fortunately, Brogy and Dorry were present at this time. Hearing Luffy's cries for help from inside the earthworm's belly, the 2 giant warriors rushed in to attack. Saturn and Warcury also stood up to compete, but Dorry and Brogy easily fended them off. In terms of strength, they were not inferior. The 2 giant warriors then threw the 2 monsters directly at each other. They continued to rush towards Jew Peter and unleashed their ultimate move, cutting the earthworm into 3 parts. Thanks to this, Luffy was freed, which made him very happy. After seeing the 2 old giant men, Luffy also greeted them, as it had been a long time since they had met. Dorry said we couldn't stand by and watch the Straw Hat Pirates in danger, so we came here